17, it gives us like a puzzle. I got to put a jigsaw puzzle into a picture. If I miss the puzzle, it cuts me off as well. So fun times. Question 17. The table shows information about the heights of 80 teenagers. Work out an estimate for the mean height of the teenagers. So first of all, you should know the mean is the average. And as teachers, we normally say the mean is the meanie one. Why is it meanie? Because it takes a lot of work. So mean is the average. So we're on the average height of the teenagers. We don't have the exact individual heights. That's why it's only an estimate. It's only an estimate because we don't have the exact 80 heights. It's group data. We know 8 teenagers have between a height of 150 and 160. 14 teenagers have a height of 160 and 170. But we don't actually have the individual heights of all 80. So to find an estimate for the mean, all we need to do is we always add 2 columns. Some students like to add the 2 columns on the end. Absolutely fine. I like to add 1 column here in the middle and 1 column on the end. It's up to you. The first column we work out is called the midpoint. MP for short, midpoint. And the last column is our midpoint times our frequency. So it's the midpoint, MP, multiplied by our frequency. How do you find the midpoint? Well, the midpoint, exactly what's on the tin, the midpoint is what's in the middle of each of our class intervals, i.e. what's in the middle of 150 and 160, in this case, 155. If you can't spot it, to find the midpoint, as a calculator paper, you can just add up the 2 end values, the lower and the upper bound, and midpoint obviously means divide by 2. So if you can't spot it, you can just type that into a calculator, put it as a fraction, 150, add up these 2 values and always divide by 2, and that'll give you 155. But a lot of the time you can just spot it. The next one, what's the midpoint? What's the middle of 160 and 170? 165. What's the middle of 170 and 180? 175. What's the middle of 180 and 190? 185. And what's the middle of 190 and 200? In this case, 195. Now we do exactly what it says, midpoint times frequency. So we're just going to multiply along each row. So we're going to do 155 times 8. So into your calculator, so it's worth 3 marks. So 155 times 8, press equals, and that gives you 1,240. 165 times 14. So 165 times 14, press equals 2,310. 175 times 24, 175 times 24, and that gives you 4,200. 185 times 30, 185 times 30, and that gives you 5,550. And we just keep going. Last one, 195 times 4, 195 times 4, press equals 780. We then always total the midpoint times the frequency. We always total that column, and we always total our frequency. And our frequency, so totaling this column first, so we've got 1,240 plus 2,310 plus 4,200 plus 5,550 plus 780, press equals, and that came out to be 14,080. So we always total our frequency, and our frequency in this case is number of teenagers. We know in this case it was 80, so that will come to 80. We never total the midpoint. We never total the midpoint. So this one here, we never total the midpoint. Never total that one. And then all we do, as we want the mean, the average, we do the total midpoint times frequency. In this case, our 14,080. We always divide by the total frequency. A common misconception is to divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the number of class intervals. That's wrong. You divide by the total frequency, in this case 80, into your calculator, divide by 80, and you should come out to be 176. You can get a decimal because the mean is the average, but here you've got quite a nice number, 176 for 3 marks. That's foundation and higher. So what would you see if you're as far back here looking on? Well, you'd see here, first of all, the first line you'd see is where it stops here. So it have a height of 1 and the width here is 3. So it'd be a rectangle of 1 by 3, obviously using a ruler and a sharp pencil. The next point you'd see, you wouldn't notice this part here because this part would be covering it. So this is the next line you'd see. So the next line up here you'd see would be another 2 squares above. So 2 squares. And again, it has the same width because you can see the width is consistent. And the next line you'd see, obviously, the height of the thing, and the height in this case is now 2 squares. So now 2 squares above, and that's it. So all you do was draw that, and that gets you 2 marks. It's like when you used to play lower down at school, when we used to play with the Rubik's Cubes, and we used to do plans and elevations with the cubes, and you had to sketch the plan, the front, and the side elevation. Question 20. Have a go in the chat. So question 20, we're told here are the first 5 terms of an arithmetic sequence. Find an expression in terms of n for this sequence. So first of all, what does an arithmetic sequence mean? You should know an arithmetic sequence means it's increasing or decreasing by a common difference. That's what it means. So an arithmetic sequence means it's increasing or decreasing by what we call a common difference. So first, to work out that common difference, how do you get from 7 to 13? Well, we simply add on 6, our term rule. How do you get from 13 to 19? You add on 6. And from 9 to 25, again, you add on 6. It must be a common difference in this. Whatever the difference is, it goes in front of n. So to work out the nth term, it's the difference in front of n. So it's 6n. If it was negative 6, it would be negative 6n. So in this case, it's positive 6, so it's 6n. Then we always work backwards to find the 0 term. So the 0 term comes before the first term. This is the first. This is my second, third, fourth, fifth term. So to find the 0 term comes before the first term. So therefore, we do the opposite. So we work backwards. The opposite adds 6. Therefore is subtract 6. And 7 take away 6 gives you 1. Whatever you get here, that's called our 0 term. That's what goes in the end. So as it's 1, it's just 6n plus 1 for 2 marks. So does that make sense or not? Question 23 is compound interest. So if you're taking your exam in England this year, you're given the formula for compound interest. So if you're given the formula, there it is. I chopped it out for you. I cut it out. Obviously, in your exam, you can't chop it up, but there's the formula. So that formula is given in the UK. I'll show you 2 ways. One is using the formula, and one is using multipliers. Again, because some people prefer to use multipliers, some people prefer to use the formula. So here, Ella invests £7,000 for 2 years in an account paying compound interest. As soon as you see the word compound interest, that's given. So that's given if you're taking your exam this year, 2024, leap year. So you can turn to your formula page. It says your compound interest. P is the principal amount. So that's the starting amount. In this case, P is 7,000. So it'd be 7,000. Outside a bracket is always multiply. So it's multiplied by. Inside, this is what you call the multiplier. So if you're using the formula, you can just copy it. The 1 is always there. 1 is the original. It's plus R is the interest rate. So the first year, the interest rate is 3. So it's going to be 3 over 100. And n represents the number of years. Well, this is the first year, so therefore n is 1. In the second year, the rate of interest is 1.5. If something changes, you copy the multiplier part. You copy the bracket. So here, you can just put multiply by, open the bracket part again. You must have the 1. It's then plus. It's always plus because compound. R is the rate. Well, the new rate is now 1.5 over 100. And that's just for the second year. In total, n adds up to the number of years. So in here, n must add up to 2. So n equals to 2. So the powers must add up to 2. So the first year was 3% for 1 year, first year. The second year, but that gains still only 1 year because 1 add 1 gives you 2. So it's just the power of 1. That goes straight into your calculator if you're using that way. I'll show you 2 ways in a second. So you just do 7,000 times by open bracket 1 plus fraction 3 over 100. Close brackets, the power of 1. We know power of 1 is not going to make a difference, but just put it in. Times by open bracket 1 plus fraction key 1.5 over 100. Close brackets, the power of 1. Press equals, press SD, and that's your final answer. And that is given in your exam. So £7,318 and 15 pence. If you don't like doing it that way, I'll show you multipliers, which is absolutely fine. This part in the bracket is what we call the multiplier. So this part is called the multiplier, and this again is called the multiplier. So because if you think about it, compound interest, you're earning interest, so 7,000, it's multiplied by, well, percent, 100% is the original, and it's added on 3%. So 3% as a decimal is 0.03. Add the 1 as a multiplier, that's the same as having 1.03, because 1 is the original, 3% as a decimal is 0.03. So 1 add 0.03 is 1.03. And again, 1 year. So you don't have to have the power 1 because just 1 year, but just put to show 1.5% as a decimal is 0.015. Add the 1 as a multiplier, therefore, will be 1.015. And again, number of years 1 because 1 add 1, total number of years is 2. You put that into a calculator, it comes out straight away as well. So they both work. So does that make sense or not? Who prefers method 1? Who prefers method 2? So method 1, that's given. Who prefers method 1? Who prefers method 2? Just curious to say, as a teacher. So it's foundation and higher. So people saying it's foundation, it's not. It's foundation and higher. It's both. So foundation and higher. Yeah, so if either of them work, absolutely fine. You can see a real mixture. That's given in your exam. So if you don't, might as well use it, it's given. If you don't like using that way, use the multiplier. Again, it's up to you. But the multiplier isn't, like I said, that is just the same. But next question is, you actually see that. So you can clear the chat on your side. You can press your finger on the screen and click hold clear or something. Shouldn't show me. So I can clear it my side, but then I can't see anyone's questions. So this one here, what we're given, here is the graph of y equals x squared minus 6x plus 4. So this is the graph here. It's drawn. This is the graph of y is equal to x squared minus 6x plus 4. That's the graph given. Write down the y-intercept of the graph y equals x squared minus 6x plus 4. So always check it's the same graph, which it is. Write down the y-intercept. So Tilly's spot on the first one I notice is the number 4. The y-intercept is where your graph crosses the y-axis. Graph crosses the y-axis, the vertical axis. That's what it means. So it's the y-intercept is where your graph, the graph in this case is the curve, the quadratic, it's the graph, the curve, that parabola, where it crosses the y, the vertical axis, and it crosses the vertical axis here at positive 4. It didn't say the coordinates, hence it's just 4. If it said coordinates, it would be 0, 4. It just says write down the y-intercept, hence just number 4. The next one, part B, don't know if you can see it. So part B, it says write down the coordinates of the turning point. So in the chat, the turning point is where the graph changes direction. Where the graph changes direction. So if you think about here, it's coming down, and at this point here it decides, oh, do you know what, I'm going to go up. It goes up, or comes down, and then at this point it goes, decides to go up here. That's what we call the turning point, so TP for short. And it says give the coordinates. A coordinate is always given as x, y. You go along the corridor, up or down the stairs. So this point here, it's along positive 3 and x, and y in between negative 4 and negative 6 is negative 5. So it's 3 and negative 5 for another 1 mark. The last one is the one people get most confused with. It says use your graph to find estimates for the roots. So the clue is in the question. It says use the graph, so you're not using algebra. Find estimates, that's plural. That means there's more than one. And again, roots. So first of all, always check it's the same graph. It's the same quadratic, x squared minus 6x plus 4 equal to 0. Your roots is where your graph crosses the x, the horizontal axis. So the roots is where the graph crosses the x-axis, the horizontal. So where does the graph, in this case here, cross the x, the horizontal axis? It crosses here, doink, and this point here, doink. It's estimates because it's going to be hard to see. So for me, it's going to be 0.8 and 5.2. So you need both of them because they're roots. This is one root. That's a root here, and that's another root. So does that make sense? 4 marks in total. Yep, so Tilly 0.8, 0.52. There will be a range. So there will be a range of answers. So if you wrote something between like 0.7 and 0.9, you'd be fine. And if you wrote something between like 5.1 and 5.3, you'd be fine. So are we okay? So let us know in the chat. So it says find the value or the reciprocal of 0.8. So the word reciprocal means 1 divided by the number. That's what reciprocal means. You'll also hear as teachers, we say reciprocal means to turn it upside down. I'll explain what that means in a second. But reciprocal means 1 divided by the number. So reciprocal of 0.8 is just 1 divided by 0.8. Foundation and higher. So into your calculator, we can just type fraction key 1 divided by 0.8. Press equals 5 or 4. You can write that, or 1.25. That's absolutely fine. So that's what reciprocal means. Reciprocal means 1 divided by number. As teachers, we also say reciprocal means to turn upside down. If you understand what that means, we know 0.8 as a fraction is the same as 0.8 over 1. Because if it's not really a fraction, you can always put it over 1. Reciprocal means to turn upside down. Flip it around. Hence, again, 1 divided by 0.8, which again is the same thing, which is 1.25. The next one, it says x equals 4,700 correct to 2 distinct figures. Complete the error interval. To complete the error interval, first of all, the number is 4,700. The two numbers either side to 2 distinct figures will be 4,600 and 4,800. 800. Hence, the error interval is going in between for the lower bound and in between here for the upper bound. What's in between 4,600 and 4,700 will be 4,650. That goes on the left. And what's between 4,700 and 4,800? 4,750. And that goes on the right. And that's it done. And that gets you another 2 marks in the back. So always read the question carefully. The next question, increased by 9% from 2018 to 2019. The population in 2019 was 165,680. The calculate the population in 2018. So there's 2 ways to think about it. If you think about it, I've got 2018 and 2019. So if you start about it, think about 2018 is the original. And then you got 2019. So it increased 9% between 2018 and 2019. So 2018 is the original. So as we're doing in percentages, we know percent is out of 100. So 2018, that's our original. That's our starting. And the original as a percent is always 100%. And that's the one I don't know. That's why it's reverse percentages, because I want to work out 2018, which is the original. We know original in terms of percent is 100%. What I do know, between 18 and 19, it's increased by 9%. If it's increased by 9%, therefore we add on 9%. So 100 add 9%, that will give us 109%, because it's 109% of its original value. Because it's increased by 9%, 100 add 9 is 109%. And we know, though, the population in 2019, we're given it, is 165,680. As long as you have an equation, you can now solve it. So how do you solve that? Well, 109%, you couldn't just divide 165,680 by 109% key. Or we know percent means out of 100. So percent means out of 100, so move the decimal in 2 places. So we'd have 1.09, lots of the original. Say the original we call x. And that would equal to 165,680. I want to get back to x, my original. The opposite of times by 1.09 is divide. So I'm just going to divide both sides by 1.09. On the left, doink and doink will cancel to give us x, the original. And therefore on the right-hand side, type into calculator, fraction key 165,680. Divide by 1.09, press equals, and you get 152,000. That was my original. And that's it done. So how do we feel about that? And that gets us another 2 marks. So that was another 80 marks done. So does that make sense or not? So let's know in the chat. So thumbs up, thumbs down. 5 questions. Who can get all 5 marks in the bank? So 5. So this one here, start with the smallest. So write these numbers in order. Start with the smallest. Well, first of all, you may like to write as a list if it helps you. Well, 0.41, right on top of each other, 0.41. Always keep your decimal point fixed. 0.5, 0.5, 0.46, and then 0. So it's up to you. Do whatever works for you. And then you can fill in the decimals if you want to. So here, for example, 0.41 is the same as 0.410, 0.5, and like that. Then starting from, they all start with 0. Next smallest number is one of the 4s. After 4, next smallest number is the 0. So therefore that must come first. So our smallest number has to be our 0.408. So 0.408. Our next smallest number, once you use it, again, looking after 4, that starts with 6, that starts with 1. So it's going to be the 0.41. Next smallest number, in this case, will be the 0.4. So 0.46. And then finally, the 0.5. So do whichever way works for you. It's 1 mark. Make sure you're banking that 1 mark. So if you need to write as a list, always start with decimal point and then read off the smallest number. Next one here is we've got write down the value of the 2 in the number 12,345. So reading from the right, that's our BCD is a quadrilateral. So a quadrilateral is a 4-sided shape. So doink, 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 doink. Work out the size of angle X. So what we should know is we can see here we've got interior angles. It's on the inside, I for interior. We should know the interior angles, the sum of the interior angles of every quadrilateral, every 4-sided shape always comes to 360 degrees. So a quadrilateral has 4 sides. It has 4 angles. All 4 angles therefore add up to 360. We've got 3. We've got 1 missing one. Hence we just add the 3 I know. So 120, add 120, add 80. Again, you can get the calculator the hard work because it's a calculator paper. So 120 add 120, add 80. That will clearly come to 320. As we've got only 1 missing angle in this case, X. In total, they come to 360. So 360 subtract 320 gives you 40. So therefore, X equals 40 degrees. And that gets you 1 mark. Give a reason for your answer, or just what you spoke of earlier. Angles in a quadrilateral always add up to 360 degrees. So angles in a quadrilateral, every shape made up of 4 straight sides, quadrilateral, add up to 360. Remember, the unit's degrees, not pounds, pence, same as 360 degrees. Next one here, the diagram shows a triangle, like show. The diagram is wrong. Explain why. So in the chat, please, why is that triangle wrong, please? So let me know in the chat, why is that triangle wrong? So looking at the chat, why is that triangle wrong? So any suggestion, why is it wrong? So angles in a triangle add up to 180. Spot on here, they add up to 190. So we know angles in a triangle must add up to 180 degrees, but if you add up these three, if we add up a triangle has 3 sides, it has 3 angles, well 60, add 50, add 80, that comes to 190. And here we know angles in a triangle should add up to 180 degrees, whereas here they add up to 190, hence it's wrong. So always read the question carefully.